So welcome, everybody, to the Black Lawyers Association's general body meeting. This month's topic, as you all know, is lawyers in politics. My name is Nahimi Kanji. I am the alumni student liaison for the 2015-2016 academic year, and I will be serving as your moderator this evening. You will be hearing from our illustrious panel about various journeys into taking into the political realm. But before we get started, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to do some housekeeping. If you have your cell phones on you, please put them on silent or vibrate, please. Thank you. And this is just strictly out of respect for our panelists as they are speaking. And if you do need to take a call, please step outside. Thank you. Now, we do have refreshments outside for you if you have not taken any. We cannot have food in this room. However, closed containers of beverages are okay. But other than that, let's get started. Now, allow me to introduce our panel. Our first panelist is Ms. Althea Garrison. Ms. Garrison is a Suffolk University grad who was elected to the state senate in 1992 and served as, as state representative, excuse me, Ms. Garrison, I apologize, in 1992 and served as the 5th Suffolk District for one term. She has ran for several offices, including Mayor of Boston, City of Boston City Councilor, and the Mass House of Representatives and Massachusetts State Senate. Welcome, Ms. Garrison.
Oh, thank you.
Now, to her left and my right is Mr. Paval Payano. I did not butcher your name? No. Awesome. Mr. Payano is a 2015 Suffolk Law grad and adjunct professor at Merrimack College, and he has served as the Latino co-director for the President Obama's 2008 campaign in New Hampshire. He's an outreach director for Massachusetts Democratic Party, and he is the president and founder of the Greater Lawrence Young Professionals Network. And also, congratulations are in order because he just got reelected yesterday. Our next panelist is newly hired senior manager of the Department of Support Services of the Massachusetts Trial Court, Sharice M. Perry. Ms. Perry is a 2008 Suffolk University grad and a former BLSA secretary. Ms. Perry also teaches at Bunker Hill Community College and is an adjunct professor over there. Ms. Perry is the secretary of the Massachusetts Black Lawyers Association and also serves as the MBLA's delegate and the Massachusetts Bar Association House of Delegates. Ms. Perry is also a member of the Massachusetts Black Women's Attorneys and Massachusetts Bar Association, a board member of the Project Hip Hop, a youth nonprofit organization in Roxbury, Mass. Welcome, Ms. Perry. Thank you for joining us. And lastly, Senator Warren, who is running late. Senator Warren was elected as mayor of Newton in 2009. He did such a great job that they re-elected him again in 2013. Mayor Warren has worked as special assistant in the White House Office of Cabinet Affairs for President Clinton. He has served as New England Director of FEMA and Deputy State Director for Senator Kerry. He currently serves on the United States Conference of Mayors Advisory Board, chairing the Community Development and Housing Committee, and is a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. In your program books, there are additional information and a lengthier bio for everyone in our panel, if you choose to read those on your own time. So, ladies and gentlemen, our goal this evening is to have a lively and authentic conversation regarding entering the political field and various routes you can take utilizing your education to spearhead your journey. Now, each and every single one of you have taken significantly different routes. Ms. Garrison did not attend law school. Mr. Payano has ran for office while in law school, and Ms. Perry was actually after law school. So we have various avenues for you guys to learn from. So my first question, which is open to everyone on the panel, when did you know you wanted to go into politics? Who would like to take that first?
My name is Althea Garrison. I first got my start in politics in 1980, volunteering for the belated Senator Everett Kennedy. I worked in 3 states, New Hampshire, Maine, and Connecticut. After that election cycle, I decided that I would run for at-large city council myself because the municipal election came up the next year. So that is how I got involved in politics.
Okay. Everybody welcome Senator Warren. Or Mayor Warren, I'm sorry. I'm raising his title. See, Floridian slip. Thank you, Mayor, for joining us.
My pleasure.
The question at hand right now is, when and how did you know you wanted to enter politics? Ms. Garrison just answered. Would anybody else like to take that question?
Well, first of all, it's really great to be here in my alma mater. I went to Suffolk Law at night. It took me about 5 years to graduate, and I was getting flashbacks as I took the elevator up. I'm sure many of you leave this building at all different hours, late after class. It gave me such a grounding for what I'm about to tell you. I went to law school a little later in my career after I had done a number of things, but I would say that the main thing that inspired me to get into public service was really my family. My dad and mom were from New York. My dad was from Harlem, my mom from the Bronx. They grew up in tough neighborhoods in New York. And long story short, my dad went to the military at a young age, sent checks back to his family. He went to Korean War. His mom was head of a household with 2 other siblings in it that my dad had. And he came back from the military, met my mom. They went down to North Carolina A&T for college in the early 60s and really engaged themselves in the civil rights movement. Sit-ins, movie theaters, lunch counters. They found Massachusetts because of my dad's graduate school. He got into Brandeis University. And they moved back up north. It took them about 7 years to get through college because they had to work their way through college. And he purchased the home that I live in Newton with GI Bill benefits. And I live in that house now with my wife and 2 children, 7 and 4. My dad spent his life really working on giving others opportunity like himself, and that was ingrained in me. I feel very lucky to be able to have grown up in the city of Newton and be able to inherit the home that I had. And everything I've really done in public life has been dedicated to fulfilling that promise of ensuring that people that look like me, people that have the background of my family, have the same opportunity. So I've been able to do a lot of things in politics. I've been mayor for 6 years, and that's what drives me every single day when I think about the initiatives we've done in Newton to provide opportunity for all people, not just people of wealth, not just people of a certain racial background, but all people. So in short, that's really how I got involved in politics. That's why we're sitting here.
Thank you. Anybody else want to take that?
Sure. My name is Pavel Payano. I think, I'm Dominican. Politics is really, it's in our culture. I remember being young and waving at 3-4 years old, waving the political flag of my mom, which was a purple flag with a yellow star. And until this day, I think my favorite color is purple, and I'm pretty sure it's because I would be waving that flag, everywhere up and down the street. Throughout my life, I've always cared about advocating for people, especially, you sort of get this feeling when you see injustice being done. where you can't go to sleep unless you feel like you've done something, even if you don't succeed, but you've done something to make it right. So I've always had that feeling within me, and it's been ingrained because of the parents that I've had. But it wasn't until I was at UMass Amherst that I realized that I not only just had a skill for this, but I had a passion for politics. Now, I started UMass Amherst, and I was extremely shy individual, could not talk in front of people. But at UMass in 2002, a year or two before me, there were 800 African Americans, 800 Latinos. In the span of 2 years, we went to 400 African Americans, 400 Latinos. So I saw that the administration was trying to push us urban kids out of the state. And when we asked them, well, what's going to happen to the Latinos and blacks that you're pushing out, the administrators would say, well, there's community college for them. When we said, hey, you want to have the housings, the dorms cost different levels, and you're going to upgrade these dorms depending on their cost, what you're going to be doing is dividing people by class and by race, and their answer was, well, that's how life is. So I felt like I needed to do something about that, and during the same time, this is right till 2001, the towers were hit, and there was this sense of, this feeling of fear against anyone that wasn't American, however you define American. People would define American and white, blue-eyed, blonde. So on one end, we're being hit by by these administrators. On the other end, I would say it's almost like they were Tea Party members from the student government were trying to lower the funding for clubs that were for people of color, and also for the Office of Law and Affairs, where basically their goal was to spread diversity around campus, and I didn't think it was a good idea. So I got involved with that, realized that I was good at what I did. We ended up beating all those guys, and I decided that what I needed to do next to ensure that that sort of struggle and that movement kept going was to elect a Democratic governor. At that time, Deval Patrick was running in the primary, so I just became fully involved in his campaign, and then one thing led to another, and sort of that's guided my career.
Ms. Perry, do you want to speak?
So I would say that I am involved in the political world in a different respect, and so I'm not like plastered on the front, or there's not a political title behind me, but I work in government, and a lot of what my role is relies upon legislation, it relies upon the budget, and government has constituents which are basically the public and how they're served. And so through law school, I kind of explored different options of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, and ultimately my focus was to serve the public, to serve the low-income population, to serve the people that otherwise could not help themselves, or otherwise didn't understand what was going on, or could not afford counsel. And I spent my time working at a small firm and then in legal aid. And within my position at the court, it's different. One, because it began as a pilot program. It addressed and provides legal assistance to the public in a different world. And so I take a step back in terms of advocacy, where I'm not advocating anymore. I'm not, standing up and representing one person. I spend my day now helping the state and the Commonwealth as a whole to really look at how the court helps the people that come into the court for services, how the court provides language access, provides access to justice to people that want to come into the court, that want to file court pleadings. And so I look at it from a different perspective, and in my new position, it's less of the day-to-day work. It's less of being at the court and helping the people with the forms. It's more looking at what we're doing now, where the court is going, looking at trends and finding different ways to, again, provide support. But it's also looking at what does the budget look like, what is the fiscal year, finance allocations and resource allocations. And so it's a different role, and one that hasn't existed in the court, and honestly not something that I thought I would ever be doing. I came out of law school saying, I'm gonna do family law, I'm gonna do guardianships, and I'm just gonna help poor people all day, and that's what I'm going to do. And this opportunity arose, and in a year and a half, I've kind of moved up the chain. But I think that although I'm not an advocate, I'm able to be involved and to assist the court in providing assistance and looking at politicians, and they're going to be, Mayor Warren has his constituents, and being able to say, there is a place for you. You can't afford an attorney, but there's a court service center located in Norfolk County or located in Middlesex County, Worcester County, where you can go and you can get help, and they can answer your legal questions, and they can direct you to places. So I think that although I don't stand where they do as for one particular position that I'm running for, there are ways to be involved in politics and the government in a different perspective.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Now, both Ms. Perry and Mr. Payano touched upon their legal education and what kind of drives them to do what they do today. Now, do you think some of the advantages and disadvantages are that you received in terms of your education that may have hindered and or helped you in your career currently? And this is open to everybody.
I don't see my education hindering anything, except the fact, I was running for state senate last year, and obviously I was still going to school. That was difficult. But outside of that, I think I've become a better leader because of the different educational programs that I've been through. The more you know, the better you can advocate for others.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to take that question?
I mean, I don't know that law school is a hindrance. I think that in order to take advantage of opportunities, law school is not it. You can't just do your schoolwork and study really hard and good grades. It's about the networking, it's about meeting people, it's about participating in bar associations and having mentors and really kind of going beyond just the books and figuring out who it is that you need to know and meeting people that are going to help guide you down the right path. I have different mentors that help me address different things, and I don't think in law school you really realize that, how important it is to study hard and do what you need to do, but also to make sure that you're not alienating yourself from programs. And when there are programs like BLSA and the Women of Color and all of the other organizations, and they have stuff, it's important that you RSVP, it's important that you show up, because those are the people that are going to help you through this process, and those are the people that are going to guide you. And I can tell you, I know plenty of lawyers that I graduated with that hit the books hard, that focused on ranks, that thought in their mind they were going to go into the big firms, and they didn't, and they were stuck with no mentors, no contacts, and no people, and that was a struggle. So I think that there are advantages and disadvantages, and one thing is law school is going to teach you how to read and write. Law school is not going to teach you how to practice. So if it's doing clinics, if it's taking advantage of pro bono opportunities, if it's interning, those are all of the things coupled with your legal education that are going to be really important. And it's important to identify that now, if there are any 1Ls and 2Ls, that you don't wait until your third year and you're taking the bar and then you're trying to figure out what is my next step and where am I going to work.
My 1Ls who are in here that we were just having a conversation outside, I hope you guys were taking notes on that. Thank you, Sharice. Now, is anybody else interested in touching upon that or elaborating?
Some advantages of my education at Suffolk University, it allowed me to be more effective in my communication with the constituency.
Okay.
It also allowed me to better socialize with different races and things.
How so? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, Suffolk is very diverse. Even back when I was going, it was very diverse.
Okay.
I think it's even more diverse now than it was then. So it allowed me to socialize and get to know different races and people.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I make a brief
Yeah.
comment? I want to amplify what Sharice talked about. I would say that 100 times. The value of networking is enormous in connectivity. Whatever you're planning to do, particularly in public service, I can tell you that people ask me, how did I get to where I was every single day? It's about building networks, opening doors for yourselves, staying in touch with people, making sure people know who you are. When you get a door open and you have the opportunity to work in a place, whether it's an internship or what have you, you work really hard and you stay in touch with the people that you work for. That is how people get jobs and get support within public service and politics. That is, I would say, 90% of people's ability to move up is that. The 10% is something else I want to mention. I'm probably the only person up here that actually has not actually practiced law. I got my degree in 2006, end of 2006, and shortly after I was working at Senator Kerry's office. I was in the Navy Reserves for 9 years. I got deployed to go to Iraq, and I spent a year in northern Iraq as an intelligence specialist. I came home, then ran for mayor, and I've been in office for 6 years, second term. What's been incredibly valuable to me, the grounding I had, and I think back, various classes, contracts, property law, and all the rest. I'm able to sit in a room with anyone in municipal government, state government, or federal government, and have not only a coherent discussion about how I want to open up opportunity to make decisions, but then also, as a chief executive, say this is where we need to go. What you're getting in law school gives you that grounding, because everything I do, every decision I make is grounded in some local ordinance, some state statute. I've got to figure out what it is, what it means, and then I've got to figure out, in some cases, in a good way to get around it, in a positive way, to help people if I need to, or change it if I need to, which I've done. So, everything I do is based in the law, and I find that I have a huge advantage when I have to make really critical decisions every day. I make hundreds of them every week because of that law school background. So whether you're the mayor or you're working within government, you will have a leg up when it comes to politics, because politicians are making decisions based on rules of the road. Rules of the road are based on law. So I don't think I would have the success as mayor if I didn't have the grounding here in law school.
Okay, so the reoccurring theme in the answers that I got so far were networking and opening yourself up to meeting new people and new experiences. Now, what advice would you give to the introvert, the shy one, who's always silent and does not say anything or participate in anything, but still wants to be able to be in some of your positions?
Well, I was that introvert, and I think till this day, I sometimes feel like I'm doing a different role, because I feel like that introvert is still in me. What I would say is, when I first started, I would get up in front of 100 people and I would speak, and I'm pretty sure like my ears would be extremely red, my face would be red, and I have no idea if they understood what I said. But I felt like I had to speak. After a while, that fear starts going away, and you start trusting yourself more, and I think you have to step up to the plate and just start doing it. You have to start practicing it. What helps is having friends along that kind of push you forward. It helps having a strong cause that that if you don't speak, you're not going to sleep that night. That will probably force you to make sure that you're getting your point across. But I think anybody can be mayor. Anybody can be senator if they really put their mind to it. If they really go out there, knock on doors, talk to people, and show voters that they can be trusted. And I love when I vote. I would rather vote for that introvert than the politician who's like a really huge people pleaser. For some reason, maybe because I'm an introvert myself, I'm kind of more geared to those individuals.
Can I jump in on that? I totally agree with everything he said. I don't mean to. When I came back from Iraq, I had never run for public office before. I'd worked for politicians. When I came back from Iraq in 2008, and I started to run for mayor, and I ran against these people who had been like city councilors or aldermen, state reps, had been speaking in front of crowds for 15, 16 years. And I remember the first few times I had to knock on a door and speak, and people would pull me aside and say, "You are terrible. You are really bad." I remember the first house party I had, people took me aside and said, "You're bad." And I remember going to these doors, the first doors I knocked on, and I just couldn't converse easily. And I agree with what you said. Practice, you just got to do it. You just have to just keep doing it, you know. And I knocked on 10,000 doors by the end of that campaign. And I had done 34 debates. So I was still nervous. I'm still always nervous in front of crowds. Jackie, there was like 700 people at the chamber breakfast this morning I spoke in front of. I mean, to think 6 years ago, I did this, I was at the chamber breakfast. My day started really early, and I delivered a speech with 700 people this morning at the Newton Marriott. And to think where I was 6 or 7 years ago with these people coming up to me telling me how terrible I was, and I was bad, to now goes to your point, which is it's anyone can do it. It's the individuals that have the fortitude, believe in themselves and what they're doing, and just keep doing it, they become better. So I agree.
And to add to that, you also have to be able to take the hits. You have to be able to take the criticism. Because, like, as you say that, I'm thinking of, the first, speech I did as a state senator where, running for state senate, where it was horrible as well. My opponent was laughing. And I'm like, I could have quit right there and there, But, it's what you say, practice. But you have to, especially because to be in public office, people expect you to be this eloquent individual. People they have an image of what a politician is, and there's no way that anyone fits everything, especially starting off. So the only way to do it is to try, and you won't know yourself what you're doing wrong unless someone around you is being honest and is saying, hey, these are the 10 things that you did. I had a campaign manager that was extremely rough, so she wouldn't say
so
it.
Did I.
But
which is good.
Yeah, I would say those are the best, because you want to be hit really hard,
You do.
so that way you understand what it is that you need to improve.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in on this? Okay. So, oh my, that's a harsh hit. You're terrible. Oh my. I'd cry. Okay. Now, what would you recommend to graduating students and brand new lawyers who are looking to enter the political field or the government? What steps do you suggest they should take other than networking? Or what steps did you find that worked for you or did not work for you?
For me, I think it's really, being willing. I went into a role that there was no blueprint for. There was, the job description was vague and ambiguous. It was, you're going into something that doesn't even exist. And I think that, one, you have to be willing to take risks. Whether it's in a government-related position or it's running for an elected office, you have to be willing to take risks, and you have to be willing to kind of go into those dark rooms where you don't know what's going to happen, and be confident with whatever decision that you are making, and be willing to just kind of roll with the punches. Government work is not black and white. It is gray. It is fluid. You have to be flexible. One day you'll come in and this is what the plan is, and that plan goes out of the window. People's minds change, people's attitudes change, jobs change, everything changes, and it's you have to be willing. And it's politics. Politics, bureaucracy, that means something. You know, you have to be able to walk into a room and, you know, you may have someone that you don't necessarily agree with. You have to be professional. And those are different things that you learn. You don't just know that. Those are things that you learn. You align yourselves with mentors, with friends that are gonna give you that push, that are gonna support you, you know, that are gonna tell you that you're terrible, that are gonna help you work on the things that you need to work on. And you have to be willing to receive that and make those changes and not be the one that says, oh, that's what they think, but I'll just take it as a suggestion. No, it's not a suggestion, it's telling you, you're terrible. What are we gonna do and how are we gonna make adjustments? And being able to look at yourself in the mirror and make those changes. You know, becoming more confident comes with practicing. And networking events are great places, whether they're big or they're small, to really be able to meet new people and learn how to engage people that you have never ever talked to in your entire life. And it's hard when you come in, you're nervous, and you don't know anybody in the room, and it's easier to just go get a plate, pick up some crackers and cheese, and wait for the program to start. It's harder to kind of do that, walk up to people, introduce yourself, tell them who you are. It's harder to be in law school and then send those people that you met a follow-up email saying, oh, remember I met you here, how are you, can I grab, it's hard, it's impossible because life happens and school happens and jobs happen and family happens. But if you're passionate about being in a role, then those are the steps that you have to take, and you have to know that it's tireless work, and it's hard. You know, it's not easy, and I think you'll spend a lot of times talking to yourself. I talk to myself all the time. You know, when it comes time to do something, I'll walk through the whole house talking to myself. All right, this is what I'm going to say today. And, you know, and even at work, people would say, you talking to yourself or you talking to me? Like, no, like because it helps you. It's a practicing thing. You know, some people live alone, some people don't. But a lot of times my house is quiet. I'm talking to the walls. I'm talking to whoever listens. But those are the things that you have to do in order to be able to, you know, go into that. Whether I go into a political field, I have no idea. But, you know, it's things that you learn and it will come with time. But, you know, you've got to be committed to it.
Ms. Garrison?
I think you have to constantly outreach to different peoples, and communication is the key. Outreach and communication.
Okay. Now, in terms of networking, I know us as young professionals, we're semi-new to the game. So how would we stay connected to some of the people that we are meeting at some of these events, whether it be school functions or some of these firm functions that are being offered to us?
I think Sharice had mentioned the email follow-up, which I think is really smart. Can I add something to what has been said? Which I think is not, sounds very simplistic, but I think a lot of people I've worked with that I've seen getting in the political field don't appreciate two quick things. One, work really, whatever job you get, whatever you have, work really hard at it. And all of us here are ambitious. I mean, we wouldn't be here talking to you if we weren't ambitious. Ambition is good. However, what I think some people skip over is they get into a job and they're looking so far ahead at what they want to do that they don't concentrate on what they're doing, and they don't do it really well. And they don't put the extra time in, overtime in, to show the people around them that they are doing it really well. And the second thing is, again, it sounds so simplistic, but I've had so many different jobs in offices. I know that the people that get promoted and get called to get a job are also the people that go the extra mile to be helpful to coworkers, do a little extra. There are folks that walk into an organization and they're smart, and they believe they should be promoted right away, as opposed to doing their time and doing their job really well and showing people. I just can't emphasize that enough. And particularly if you want to get into politics, The people that do what I'm saying, and I'm sure you've seen this, I'm sure you've seen this, will be called back, they will advance. But on the connectivity, I meet people all the time at events, I meet people all the time at networking events, and they will email me after I meet them, I will email them back, I will be in touch with them, and they periodically stay in touch with me and the staff, and when job opportunities open up in my organization, I know who they are, and I'm able to reach out to them. And that goes back to the networking thing, but you have to make the effort to put yourself in front of people. That's all I wanted to add. I just wanted to add the other portion that you wanted.
Just one quick thing to add to what the mayor was saying. I think, in this school, we have some of the best and brightest minds. We have problem solvers. There are individuals that have like several degrees. And especially when you're running for office, sometimes it's not the person who's the most capable and educated on paper that wins. So for example, in my race, I have 3 degrees. If you look at my resume, you're like, wow, this person fits for the, he's a perfect fit for the job. But one of my opponents, what she would say was, because I hadn't graduated law school, she would say, he hasn't graduated school yet. So when I would knock on the door, the voter would say, well, how can you think of taking this position when you haven't even graduated college yet? And then I had to start, instead of giving my pitch, I had to be like, well, actually, I graduated from this place, and I'm finishing law school, whatever it was. So to voters, I think your degree means something, but it's not everything. They're looking for a person they trust. They're looking for a person that has done something out in the world. So I think, what the mayor was saying, fits, which is whatever it is that you're doing, to do it very well and to put passion into it. Because when you're doing that, other people notice. And that is a really good way to increase your network. Because no matter what it is, when people see you doing good work, even if it's in a different field, they're like, I want that person in here. Because it's not even if you don't know anything about exactly what they do, they're like, well, this person is passionate, this person's a go-getter, this person, knows how to problem solve and take, 10 different things and, do it all at once. So I think that passion is extremely important.
Thank you for that.
Can I just add?
Mhm.
I think, so I went to the Mass Bar Association has a tier mentoring program, and the woman that spoke there, she had a lot of really good tips. And one really good tip that she gave was when you get business cards, not at that very moment, but you take the business cards and you write kind of trigger terms and things about where you met that particular person, what you remember about them, something that they said that might be a connector, so that when you email them, that might be something that they actually remember. But it also, when you brought home 10, all 10 of those people may not be people that you're going to decide to follow up with, but for the few that you do decide to follow up with, you'll remember who those 5 people are, or who those 2 people are, because you're going to meet a lot of people. People are going to give you business cards. I would just add in terms of kind of the hard work. I think that the reality is that people of color are always going to have to work hard. You're always going to have to go that extra step. And I think that for some, that education and, having more degrees than someone else or whatever it is, sometimes that's not what gets you the job. You may be up against someone that has graduated from a better law school or a better college, cum laude, whatever it is, but you may be a much harder worker than that person. You might stay later, and that might be noticed. In the trial court, it's not always the people that are sitting there as part of the panel work in your department. When I went for my promotion, I had a chief justice, I had someone from the executive office, I don't know these people, and it's what happens. But they're from different offices, they're all of higher level kind of management, and they can identify people that work hard. They can identify strong candidates for positions. They know how to read through interviews and read through resumes and cover letters and things like that. So I think it's important, one, that you realize that everyone is watching you. You know, you may have one position, but everyone is always watching you. I worked at one point in the court, so housing court's watching me, probate and family court, facilities is watching me. When I send a request for something, my manner in which I ask for that request, how I treat that person's staff, all of that, you know, I stay late often. The manager of facilities stays late too, so he sees me, you know, and when he talks about people, he's talking to his directors. All directors meet each other. So I think it's important that in terms of networking, every person that you come in contact with, you don't know who they know, you don't know who their family is, you don't know who their friends are, you don't know who they sit on a parent council with, you know, you don't know who's driving next to you in the car. And it's important that all of your interactions with people are always positive, because when you're driving in that car and you beeping or flipping somebody the bird, you might walk into an interview, or you might be sitting on the train and you're rude to the person, the pregnant person, and didn't get up and let that person sit down, and you get to your job interview and she walks in. So it's important that you keep all of that in mind when you're working through this, because again, this is a small world that we live in of Boston, and you never know. You stole that person's parking spot at the Watertown Mall. Listen, it's things that are important. If politics is where you're going, you don't know if that's going to be a future constituent. You don't know if that's going to be one of the 10,000 doors you knock on and the person walks in and says, "Oh no, I remember you." Boom. You don't know, and that could affect you in the future. So all of that, I think, is equally important.
Yep.
I think a good way to sort of like build up, if you're interested in running for office or anything politics related, a good way to build up that experience and a good way to make those contacts in those fields is to volunteer for somebody, or help, you know, start a project here at Suffolk, or help someone start a project here. Through volunteering, you learn a lot, and the great thing is you don't have to run for office to do that, right? I think I look back when my first job was with the Democratic Party. To get that job was very, very difficult. I think I'm probably definitely the only Latino there, I think the only person of color for a while at the party. But I think one of the reasons that I got in was because there was this mechanism in 2006 where you could see how many voters, regular volunteers, were signing up. And for like a day, I beat the field director for the campaign. And then after 2 days, you know, the field director all of a sudden jumped like by 1,000 or something. But I think them seeing that I was that I was good at what I was doing volunteer-wise led them to make the decision to hire me on as a staff person. So I think definitely think about, if you're interested in politics, think about volunteering. And, you know, next year the presidential election, so that, you know, that would be a really good place to start. Or even a state rep. There's always special elections going on in Mass. So next year, I'm sure there's a lot of state rep, state senator elections that will be up for grab. Jump in, see how it's like working in an area that's not an urban city. Because I think one of the difficult things that you will find is that, you know, there's a lot of racism in politics, not just with voters, but trying to move up kind of the field. Is sometimes difficult because we don't have the same networks as our white peers. So growing that network, there's a lot of work to be done for us to grow that network, so we'll be at the same sort of level as everyone else. But the only way to do it is to sort of like put your foot in the door and try.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Payano. Due to the time, we are going to open the floor to questions. Don't be scared, this is your opportunity. Yes.
I got a question for Mr. Payano. How was running for office while you were here in law school during your second year?
Probably one of the hardest things ever, because you have two big projects, which is one, you want to get good grades, and two, you want to win. And doing both is hard. My grades definitely went down a little bit. You know, sometimes I look back and I ask myself, did I make the right decision? But I definitely think I did, because even if I if I won, then the answer would have been a hell yeah, I did, right? But even though I did not win those votes, I definitely gained a lot, not just experience-wise, but in my city, my name is known. People trust me a lot just because of the door-to-door. I won in my city. I just didn't win in the suburbs, basically. So whenever whenever it is that I end up opening up my practice, I'm sure I'll get a lot of business come my way. But to basically put it in a nutshell, it was extremely hard to do. But it was doable. You just basically have to manage yourself, and you have to have a good team.
Any other questions on the floor? Do you mind speaking up a little bit?
All right, my name is Bethany Sturhoff, 2008. I just wanted to, we'll just be straightforward. I feel like it's very presidential demeanor. And I'm just
Mayor, maybe the campaign starts here.
So I just wondered what your path would be. Do you plan to stay, in your role as mayor, or do you hope to potentially run for Senate, or what are your goals?
I am very flattered by your question. Here's what I would say. I'm up for re-election in 2017. I'm in the second year of my second term. I absolutely love being a chief executive in government. I've been able to be out of the arena of partisan politics and actually focus on people and moving the needle on the ground. There's nothing like it. And not that I don't love our legislators and all the rest. I'm pretty passionate about being a chief executive. Now, what that means next, I don't know. I'm up again in a couple of years. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what my next step is. We just sat through an interview today with Politico, right, Jackie? And I feel like this is the continuation of the discussion, which is a good thing because I get a chance to talk about how great it is being a mayor. I would just say to all of you, I really would encourage you all again to run for office. I can't tell you how important I think it is. I mean, it's really great listening to the folks on this panel. All think will be in leadership positions in politics. I know, I feel it. But I think right now, in particular, there's a lot of division in the public space right now. Very divisive language, very extreme language. What seems to be rewarded from the media and others is people who like to throw bombs at people, as opposed to the hard grind, and it is a grind, of governance and actually looking at research and data and problem solving and figuring out, for instance, how to deal with the income inequality question and economic mobility for this generation. I talked to my parents and all the things, your parents, I'm sure. We have to take the responsibility here to ensure there's opportunity for people of all backgrounds. This is hard work. It's not just platitudes. It's hard work of education, transportation, housing. How are we going to transform what cities look like? How are we going to make sure we're developing jobs with higher wages and we're getting people ready for those jobs of all ages? Not just young people, because people are changing jobs now a lot because of the changing economy. These are tough questions, and it's going to require asking people to do things, like constituents to do things, and private sector and public sector folks to do things that are not popular. These are, and not to fall into the silos of division. It's easy to attack other people. It's harder to put the facts out and say, how do we work together, work across the aisle, race, class, gender, put all those things aside. We're all human beings. Let's get to work. I mean, I love doing it. I think we need more people that think like that in my business right now. I really do. I think there's a lot of just rhetorical stuff going on. So I would encourage you to run for office, get involved with governance. One other quick thing, observation, I'm sorry, that I have In local government, I'd like to see a next generation of people in local governance. If they're not in the elected office, then, elected officials need to run an office. They need policy people. They need decision makers around all the issues I just mentioned. Who are those decision makers? Telling the mayor, telling the governor, telling the state rep, telling the state senator. Who are the people in those offices that are advising, that are directing policy? We need people in those positions now desperately. I'm seeing an aging group of people. I'm not seeing a lot of younger, smart, bright people. So if you're civically minded, I completely respect people that want to go to the nonprofit sector, but we need people in government. We need people in politics. So that's my ask of you all.
So I would add to that to say, the most recent election of Andrea Campbell. I mean, she is an attorney. She worked for Governor Patrick's office. She was a
It's
member
fantastic.
of the MBLA, and she has a legal education. And, I think to Mayor Warren's sentiments is to say that there's two people that were beat out, Steve Murphy, who I know personally, and, Charles Yancey. And City Council looks a little bit younger now. And I think that there's a lot of new energy that's coming in, with an understanding and an appreciation for the community, for which it is serving. It's really hard, for me to see kind of an older generation, and an example of that is, part of a parent committee. My daughter's charter school is trying to move into Roxcomb, and I sat in this kind of a butters meeting, and the comments from the older people of color in there was really, the schools are taking up spaces, and, there's too much traffic, and on the weekends there's events. And to me it's disheartening, because I think that our Black and brown children and poor communities need extracurricular activities, they need sports, they need all of this stuff. And it frustrates me seeing older generations say, but you're causing too much traffic, and you're, too much parking and too many activities in the evening time. So I think that it's important, and for people of color as well as lawyers to know that you actually have a step ahead of other people because of your legal training, because of your understanding of what the law looks like. And a lot of really strong politicians that are lawyers, because they understand how the law works, but they have an appreciation for the communities that they're serving, and they're energetic, and they're fighters, they're debaters, they're arguers. But you can go into politics, and it doesn't have to be now, it could be in the future. You might wake up one day and go from a practicing attorney to a mayor, a city council, a state representative. So there's nothing that you can't do with your legal degree.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, go right on ahead.
I think all those points are great. I just wanted to add that I think decades of divisive politics have really hurt our Black and brown communities. It's extremely hard to grow something. And when our communities are so disempowered, our power isn't felt. So when you look at government, one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of Black and brown people that are in these policy positions, because I think there are, I know plenty of friends that have tried to obtain, very smart individuals that are tried to obtain some of these positions, but they might not fit the entire circle that individual is looking for, because their perception of what that title or position is not, somebody with dreads, or whatever that individual looks like. And I think the only way to change that, the only way to get more people of color that represent our communities is if we're able to unite our communities and actually get them out to vote and get them to sort of fight for the issues that we care about, to advocate for themselves. I think one of the things that I always see as being, and I'm a 110% Democrat, but one of the things that I always get angry at my own party is that sometimes I see elected officials come to our community, ask us for a vote, make their promises, and then it's 5 years down the line, and you still haven't seen anything or taken the right steps to move down those lines. But at the end of the day, I'm much as its fault as that elected official, because within those 5 years, I was never pushing and attacking and trying to get them to do what they have to say. I sort of figured, all right, we're going to trust them. And I think in our communities, we do that a lot, and we have to change. We have to advocate for ourselves, and hopefully once we start doing that, we'll be able to see a lot of improvement in our cities. Like I sit on the school board, and one of the biggest battles, so I came on the school board because I was doing my master's, and as part of my capstone, I decided to study Lawrence, and I found that 51% of the students were failing the math MCAS. And if all the jobs of tomorrow have to do with math and science, I'm like, what are we doing to generations upon generations of youth in Lawrence? So get on the school board, and the big fight that I'm having is that all the other white members of the school committee are talking about, are these kids ready to work? Are they learning English and getting ready to work? And I'm like, no, like this is not what you should, even though the public schools were like 90% Latino. I was one of 2 Latinos on the board, and I was saying, you're not preparing these students to be factory workers. You're not preparing them for a trade. If they wanted to find a trade, they'd be at a vocational school. We have to be preparing them to college. But because I went through that, I was able to have that voice. Because these individuals were thinking, ESL, let's just let them learn English and they'll be okay. So we need people like you to be involved. We need people that have a different perspective. Even if you're not in politics, even if you're the person that organizes your neighborhood to make calls to your city councilor or make calls to your mayor, your senator, that is vital and that is important. So I definitely want to stress that I would love, I saw a lot of Latinos getting elected this year to local elected offices. I want to see next year and the years moving forward more black and brown folks in those positions. And I think all of you here are capable of doing that. Even if it's not as a school committee member or city councilor, you can be on a board, you can push, or you could be on a neighborhood association. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Thank you. And this is a question for myself, actually. To kind of piggyback off of what both you and Ms. Perry have said, how would you address a situation where a lot of us are either first-generation American, first to go to college, let alone grad school, and there are a lot of interfamily and personal, whether it be friends, relationship strifes, in terms of, well, you're trying to work for the man versus looking at it as a positive aspect. How would you address that with your inner circle?
I did not. I have some friends that do think that way. The way that I see it is, there's definitely several ways of changing society, being outside the box and trying to change it from outside. But I also think that if you're a person with the right morals, the right ethics, and you have the right mindset, on that you want change in your community, if you get into one of these positions, you'll be more likely to make those changes. Now, anything in government, there's so much red tape. You're inside this box, and it's hard to change things, and change happens slow, especially within government. So it's hard for people, especially you make certain promises, it's hard for people to be patient, especially when the need is right now. But if you're able to elect an individual that has that passion, that the change needs to happen right away, it's more likely for that to happen. I think it depends on the conversations you have, it depends on the individual. But if the option is to sit back and do nothing, or to take action and hope for the best, I would hope that my family and my friends would be, will step up and hope for the best. Now, in campaigns, one of the things that, because I ran for school board, but then when I ran for state senate, it was, 4 communities. There was the lack of hope in my city was one of my biggest obstacles. People didn't believe that I was even going to get like 1,000 votes. I ended up getting 4,000 something. Like I won in the city. My city is, even though it's more than 70% Latino, about like 45% of Anglos go out to vote. So they vote more than the Latinos. So a lot of my friends and family didn't think that I was going to go anywhere because they were saying, listen, you're running up against a white person, you have no shot. And it was at first difficult to get them to be supportive. But what I did was I worked very hard, I knocked on a lot of doors. They started seeing a lot, sort of crossing that racial boundary. And when you went to my fundraisers, you saw folks from across the river at my events, and that sort of started changing the mindset. Once you have that little spark of hope in someone, it's like the entire candle just rekindles. And they're more likely to sort of like get involved and do something. But you should expect that not everybody in your family and that not all your friends will get involved. Even some of your closest people that you think have your back won't. But even though while that might happen, you end up meeting a lot of other good people that end up being good friends and will end up being almost close family members that fill those voids.
Yes. Can you speak up, please, so we can hear?
My question is, what do you think of that person running for state attorney and even serve in southern state that has never elected a black state attorney because one never ran?
Did you guys hear that?
Can you
What?
repeat it one more time?
What do you think of the deaf person running for state attorney and even serve in southern state that has never elected a black state attorney because they never had one run in their history?
Okay, to repeat that question, it is, what do you think about a deaf person running in a conservative southern state for state attorney, that has never had a black person run for office? For state attorney.
Is the deaf person black as well?
Yes, he's here.
Okay, okay.
So deaf,
And
someone
black.
who's deaf and black, running for state attorney
In a southern conservative state.
in a southern. I don't know what state it is. Look, I think that, I think whoever the person is has an incredible shot to win. I don't know what state this is. And here's why I believe that. There's two reasons, and I'm not understanding the state or the politics of the state. I've been involved with some national campaigns, and I obviously look at demographics and I look at what's happening. A couple of things I would say. One is that though there's a lot of division right now from a racial perspective, and I do think there's division right now from a racial perspective in the United States, at the same time, we've elected an African American president twice. So people have to recognize when we think about these questions the significance of that and how quickly I was talking about my parents trying to desegregate lunch counters in the South. And here we are, in 2015 with a two-term black president. I think that cannot be underestimated. Why do I say that I think is a validating point? Before Barack Obama won, if you recall, going back to 2008 during his campaign, 2007, 2005, 2006, did you ever think that a man named Barack Hussein Obama could be the president of the United States in 2005? I mean, let's get real here. Did anyone in this room believe that a guy from Illinois that no one knew about ever, state senator? The answer to that is probably no. And I can tell you right now, I didn't think he had a chance. I think that when people see an individual like President Obama, who I admire greatly and I've gotten to know, when they see a competent, you may not like some of his politics, but a competent chief executive who has run this country in an efficient manner, gotten us out of a depression, practically, almost depression. On the world stage, I do think that's incredibly significant. So you go to this southern state with someone who's black and deaf, there's an opportunity for that individual to make a case with a certain segment of the electorate that they can do a competent job, not based on their race or background, but their track record. I would make the argument that there is a shot, and there's a strong shot. I am the first popularly elected black mayor in the state of Massachusetts. No one thought I could win, and a number of people said to me I couldn't win because I was young and African American, and they advised me not to run. I knocked on 10,000 doors, and I went directly to the people, and I made my case, even though I was a terrible speaker at the beginning. I kind of got through that. I think it's possible. That would be that's my answer.
I think that when you look at implicit bias and racism and color, we always talk about color. You know, he's black and he's deaf. You know, being black is not a qualifier or a disqualifier. And a lot of times when you're dealing with arenas that are not all black, sometimes it's, oh, you know, this person is going to run for this office and they're of color, so they understand the community. I don't understand the community because I'm of color. I understand the community because maybe I grew up in the community. Maybe I'm passionate about the community. Maybe I worked in the community and I have a desire to work with these people. So I think that we've got to eliminate, in some respects, color from the equation. You know, President Obama was elected not because he's a black man of color, because he's an attorney, because he's competent, because he had the ability to do a great job, and we trusted what he was doing. For some people, he was a black man and we was gonna elect him into office, and for some, because he was black, that was a qualifier. But I think that we come from an educated background, and being of color should not be a qualifier for you yourself. You know, if I go into a position and I go into an office, I'm not gonna say I can do this job because I'm a black woman. No, that might be what they're looking for, but that doesn't make me qualified to do my job. My education, my training, my relationships, and everything else makes me a qualifier for a position. So, you know, I think that that particular person, if they're ready for a challenge, if they have a strong team, you know, if they're ready to be knocked down and get that criticism and bounce right back, I think that, hey, there's a chance. There's a chance for anybody to do anything that you want to do. You know, and the question about family and friends and not supporting and being first generation, I think there is education that comes from that. You know, you have a particular culture that you grow up in, you have your family. You don't choose your family. They are your family, but you choose the relationships that you have with those people. And I think the reality is that I have plenty of family. I have an extremely big family. I probably don't see half of them, and it's not because I don't want to, it's because sometimes people have opinions that don't necessarily move you forward in what it is that you're trying to do, or they're negative opinions, or they don't believe in you. And honestly, those are people that you may not want to continue to be around or associate with, because what you need are people that are going to support you in whatever the decisions are that you make. If you run for office, that they're going to be there to pick you up when you take that big loss, you know, that are going to help those late nights of working hard. So I think that there's anything that any of you all want to do, you have to just be ready to just do it, and own the decisions, and be accountable. You know, accountability is huge. You got to be accountable to the constituents. You have to be accountable to the people that you make promises to. And accountability goes well beyond just at that particular time. You know, you may lose, and I think sometimes people lose and then they forget about those constituents that they met. You know, it's important that you continue. If I run for office tomorrow, you know, if I made promises to people, if they elected me, this is what I was going to do. It doesn't end because I've lost. I still have to be passionate. I still have to meet that community, and I still have to be willing to work for that same community.
Can I just add one thing about the demographics that I failed to mention? Two facts that are true. One is, from a just pure demographic standpoint, United States, there is a growing population of people of color in this country. That's just fact. And it's shifted dramatically in the last 15 years. There are more people of different racial backgrounds, blended racial backgrounds in the United States now, more than ever. Those numbers and percentages are increasing. The downside is we are very segregated society still. We still live in physically separate neighborhoods. People of color, white people. It's all data driven. I'm not saying anything. One of the pluses are, when you think about these political races, simply because there are more people of color, there's a better chance that someone who is a person of color can win some of these races in states and nationally. I think the challenge is how we come together as a country and we have more connectivity with one another. We know that the more human beings get to know each other, black and white people, people of color, people who are not of color, and they get to know what the character of the individual is and the kind of person they are, those barriers start to come down. We know that physically, people being in the same places, doing things socially with one another, so that there's a better understanding. And I think, the stories of me knocking on 10,000 doors, getting to know me as a person and what my issues are, is one of the more powerful stories about breaking down one of those barriers. I think that has a lot to do with it. So I think that if we can, in essence, not be as segregated as a country, I think we have a better chance at breaking down divisions and giving everyone an equal shot at moving up in not only politics, but in the private sector, the public sector. I mean, the more we break down those barriers, I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, wow.
Can I add something real quick
Yes,
to that?
go right on ahead.
I disagree. I wanted to add to what Mayor Warren said, and also I disagree slightly with Ms. Perry was saying. I personally think, being Latino, Black, Asian, whatever, I do think that it's an important qualifier. Now, granted, I don't think you should solely think that just because I'm Latino, I'm going to get elected into office. Right? There's a bunch of different. I'm educated, I'm passionate, and I have ideas for my community. But also my experience as a Latino, growing up in Lawrence, going to public schools, going to college is very different from my white peers, and I think that's an important sort of experience that changes me and moves me as an elected official. And I'd like to add, as far as when you're running for office, while that sounds like a very conservative state, you're going to see the same type of racism in a very democratic city or town. Every time I run for office, there hasn't been one time where I have not come across someone that tells myself or one of my volunteers, I don't vote for those type of people. There was once last year I was talking to someone and he said, well, I'm an original. And I said, well, that's great. I love unique people. And he's like, no, I'm an original. So I had a confused face. And he's like, no, I'm an original to this country. So I'm like, oh, in my head I'm thinking, he's Native American. Yeah, sometimes I'm like way too innocent. He's like, my family came here in the 1920s. I was like, oh, you're one of those. But even though he was being extremely ignorant and racist, we talked, and I said, sir, so what is it that you don't like about this city? I heard some really bad things, but then I heard some stuff that we could talk about. Talked about violence, talked about the schools. Knocked on his door about 3 times. Guy went to the polling place, and he said that he voted for me. So it's all a matter of what Mayor Warren was saying. It's knocking on doors. At the end of the day, you vote for an individual that you feel comfortable with. There were so many people, educated people, that voted for President Bush, even the second time around, and what they said was like, oh, well, he felt like someone I could talk to and have a beer with. Like, that's what you want for president. But anyways, that's, when people go to vote, they want someone that they can trust. So even though there might be individuals that feel, a completely different way because of the color of our skin, the more they get to know us and the more that they see things in common, it will be likely that they might go our way. So even if out of 10, only 3 end up, grudgingly voting for you, that's still 3 votes. And how Mayor Warren was saying, I was about to say Senator Warren. What he was saying, it's all, any race can be won. It's all about being strategic, knowing what your base is, looking at those numbers, having a good campaign staff, being passionate, and hitting those doors and making those calls. If I look back on my own race, I think there's a sense of, especially when you're young, that I was waiting for like the leaders to kind of endorse and help me out. And I think if I would have started 2-3 months earlier doing the hard work that we did, maybe things would have been differently. If you're passionate, forget what everybody else is saying. Go for what it is that you want and take it to the voters. Take your message to the voters, let them decide, and eventually those folks that were against you will end up coming to your side.
Thank you, Mr. Payano. I'm going to take the last 3 questions because I did see 3 hands go up. I will ask that you guys get to your point fairly quickly, and the panel answer fairly quickly due to time restraints, because I know people probably want to take pictures with you guys and have sidebar conversations.
We're in politics, so it's hard to stop talking.
The order will be Madam Vice President, Treasurer, and a gentleman behind the Treasurer. Madam Vice President.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Rose. I'm a Tucson and Vice President for BLSA. My question is, just as a leader of color, I'd just like to specifically kind of touching on what you've mentioned, just some of the challenges and the obstacles specifically related to race. I went to school in Chestnut Hill, which I thought was great, actually.
It is.
Oh,
It's
it is?
part of
Oh,
New,
Brookline.
both Brooklyn and
Okay.
New.
Well, so just the challenges, in your neighborhoods with respect to your race, and how you overcame that as a leader, and, just like to share a specific instance.
I'll try to be brief on this one. I know you're talking to me. I'll be brief. I think, look, there is something called, as you probably know, implicit bias that we all have. There are assumptions that are made by every human being when they look at someone. They look at their skin color, they look at what they look like. There are assumptions that are made based on stereotypes and things that they've seen, sometimes in the commercial and in other ways. I think that as people of color, I think we all, particularly because of what I described as the segregated nature of our society, I think for me, and I'm sure other people, when we are in our everyday lives, our work lives, our social lives, we face them. When we walk into a room, when I walk into a room for a meeting, when I'm walking around in City Hall, when I'm walking around the city. And I know that, and I see it every day. People make assumptions about me, what kind of decision, what kind of leader I am. So I think the challenge for me is to not, knowing that is what is happening every single time, understanding that person may or may not have this implicit bias, understanding that for me to be a leader for all people and not just people of color, I need to have a level of understanding. I need to ensure that I don't absorb that in a negative way, and hopefully in a diplomatic way, educate, right? And it may not be an education that says, I know what you were thinking, let me tell you the truth. A lot of times it's how I execute my job. Because someone makes an assumption about what I would do, how I think, and then they sit there and they actually see I do the opposite and they hear why. That's education. You're educating people without absorbing that in a negative fashion or lecturing. Now, sometimes that's hard to do, and sometimes you have to do. So I found that is the mechanism in which I use when I face that. And I face it during a campaign. I face it every single day. I have a blended household myself. My wife is of German and English descent. My kids are blended background. And every single day in my household, my wife and I ensure that my kids have a respect and understanding of who they are. in their blended background with all their family. And I know that they, as they get older, they're 7 and 4, are going to face this every single day when they go to school and everything else. My job to arm them with the understanding that I have. And I think will make them stronger. And I think it will make them be much more resilient and be able to deal with many different situations. And I think it's made me that way too. Many more situations than if I did not face that. I know that was a little long, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Does anybody want to touch upon any points? Oh, okay. Treasurer Cooper?
Question for you, Mr. Mayor Warren. First of all, I read somewhere that you were a naval intelligence officer in Iraq, I believe, so I want to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Segue into a question that I had about, I read somewhere the statistic that a lot of homeless folks in the city are veterans. And so, I have a question about what you think, some of the issues are that lead to homelessness, and what can, people that are into policy making or are into decision making or are just into the public service can do about that. If there's anything to be done about that. What are your views on?
There's lots to be done about that. I promise. That is a very complex question this gentleman asked. I'm going to try to be short. First of all, just to correct the record, I was a naval intelligence specialist, enlisted. I was enlisted, E6, not an officer. I was a working man. Look, first of all, the latest statistics, and the president has done a lot of work on this, around the homeless population, I believe shows that a third of the homeless population, I believe, are veterans in the United States. It's a huge population. I have to double check that fact. What we've done, two quick things about the facts. We are going to have to revamp how veterans re-enter our cities and towns. And when I say veterans re-entering our cities and towns and coming home, I mean veterans of all wars. Vietnam, Korea, even before that, as well as OIF, this current generation. What do I mean by that? The United States has not figured out how to ensure when a veteran comes back home from being in country, they are captured and they, in one place, get all the services they need. Hard services, which is health, in some cases mental health services, in other cases, social connectivity. When you're in the military, were you in the military? When you're in the military and you are in a combat situation, you are trained to do certain things. You're in a particular environment that is has a certain structure. When you are out of the military and you've been in that structure for a number of years, particularly if you've been in combat and overseas, and you come out of that, what the military does is does really well at getting you ready to go into combat. What they don't do is, when you come out, get you ready to be a civilian again. And there's a lot of research and work being done around the fact that part of the reasons why you see higher levels of homelessness and some other issues with veterans is that they are disconnected from a cohesion that they had for a period of time, an intense cohesion and experiences. What we've done, some of the answers that are coming are a couple-fold. I've been working with the Harvard Kennedy School in developing a new, innovative program for veterans when they come home, where there's a one-stop place physically in a region where they can walk in a door, have connectivity with other veterans, and be connected to services. Not just virtually, which people are starting to develop those platforms, but a physical place. There's been a lot of work done on that. So I'm working with Congressman Kennedy and Congressman Moulton. Congressman Moulton is a veteran, and Congressman Kennedy from my district. And we're putting together, and I just met with Seth Moulton actually last week around this. We've already developed a model in Newton that's regional. We've been running for 3 years. It's been quite successful for the population of veterans that we have now. We want to expand that model to other regions. There are some interesting things going on in the western part of the state, as well as the southeast part of the state that have adopted this model. I think we need to do that. And then the second thing we need to do is get the VA fixed for health benefits. They are antiquated. They are they need to be updated, and we need to get benefits to veterans faster than what they are, how they're turning it around now. And so those two things need to happen. New innovative way to capture veterans, which we're developing now, and then a faster way to make sure we take care of veterans' benefits on the federal end. I know that was a little long, but complicated.
And then to pick up after, on the other side of that is the trial court through veterans courts.
Yes.
Is they're also
Yes,
looking
thank you.
at, you know, the services that veterans receive because of a lot of their mental health issues and the other things that are not being met. When they come back, the problem is they're becoming repeat offenders, and they're committing crimes as a result of the issues that they're facing. And so I think that, you know, if programs like this can exist, and the court has systems in place for probations and monitoring and things like that, then I think it's a better way to, it's going to move to a better place of providing services to veterans. I do think it's gonna take some time, but I think the VA is off, I mean, there are benefits for veterans that veterans tend not to know about at all. And one of my co-op students is a veteran, and he said that he lost a lot of money on education credits and things because they don't actually tell you what exists. If you know and you learn, then you can take advantage of it. But if you do not, you know, they're not handing it out. But to your question, there's a combination of veteran services being provided.
And the gentleman behind.
My name is Ronnie Marini. I'm a 1L. And, well, 2 years ago, I shook your hand at City Hall. I'm a Newton resident, product of the Newton school system. Shook your hand. You told me you went to Suffolk High School, and you put Suffolk on my radar. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just had a question. As a product of the Newton school system, it's a very successful school system, and I was just wondering, in the interest of time, just a couple factors that you would like to see implemented from the Newton school system to other districts across the state. A couple successful things.
One of the things about the Newton Public School System we're working on right now, and congratulations, it's great seeing you again. Two things. One, really attacking the achievement gap in our schools. We know from a data perspective that kids that are coming into our school system with lower income and some kids of color, when they get into our school system, particularly kids of lower income households, do not have the same resources outside of the school that the kids that are coming into those same classrooms from the very beginning that have outside connectivity and resources. What am I talking about? We have data on this. When you start at kindergarten, everyone starts at the same level of ability, academic ability, and all the rest. What goes on is the kids in wealthier households, they're getting all sorts of programming after school, during the summer, that enrich brain development, that enrich their capacity in the time that they're not in school to come back into the classroom where they have higher achievement. The kids that don't come from wealthier households, that don't have all this investment in brain development, social and emotional learning, reading skills, basic math skills, all those things that help reading, all those things that help. So we're talking about summer camps, talking about enrichment camps. They don't get that. They go back into the same classroom after the after-school experience and summer experience, and you know what ends up happening? This is what it looks like. Wealthier kids go like this, kids that don't have that much money go like that. So that divide continues all the way till you get to high school. So this is what happens. This is what happens. Even in a high-performing district like Newton, you got a certain segment of the kids that are in curriculum 3, which is the lower class, curriculum 2. You got another segment of kids that are in AP, honors, and all the rest. And so what we are concentrating on at NP and Newton Public Schools now is from the very beginning all the way through elementary to high school, giving supports to those kids in school, and now we're even looking at some out-of-school things during the summer, so that they can compete just like the kids coming from the wealthier households. In the last 3 years, we had a program that was set up 3.5, 4 years ago. It started in Newton North. where we gave kids from lower income households coming in, a lot of kids of color, but some kids not of color. When they started freshman year, we gave them supports. They were in curriculum 3, which is lower level. We gave them support outside of school, during summer, and we put them in AP and curriculum 1 classes on that track. We did that for 3 years. Guess what happened when that happened? Those kids did just as well as the other kids. So this has nothing to do with raw ability. This has to do with investing in kids and people and getting children and families involved early, by the way, the parents involved early. So one of the things that Newton is doing that could be exported, and there's a lot of other things I could talk about, but I point that out, that Newton is doing that could be modeled in other districts is the outside enrichment. Even in districts that don't have the high-performing classrooms that we have in Newton, you could actually do some of the same thing we're doing in other districts. And so I think that could be exported. It should be exported, and we're going to continue to grow that.
Go ahead.
I completely agree with everything you're saying. I think the hard part is when you're dealing with an urban district, finding the money to do the extra enrichment. I know, the state in Lawrence, it's a little bit different because the state took over all of our schools, and I think because of that, they have been more giving when it comes to our budget. So we've actually added extra hours during our day, and there's more grants for enrichment opportunities for these students. But I think at the end of the day, I think us as a state, we have to come forward and
I
and
totally
say,
agree with this. We've got to make this. We got to make the investments, and it's not just about inside the classroom. I mean, this is all the research is showing. It's about children and families outside the classroom, and we've got to step up as a state to do this. And again, I'm pretty passionate about this because we know we're watching this happen.
Right.
So I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
you.
no, but
But that you're exactly right.
And I think there's certain things that are changing. Like if you went back a few years ago, I think teachers and administrators thought, well, this is the curriculum, this is what we're going to teach,
Right.
and everyone is going to have to learn it without taking into account like the cultures people are coming from, the income divide. There's so many other things that go around. Like you can't do a cookie cutter approach to every student. So there's been a slight change where we have to try to push for that change to happen. One of the things that I found being on the school board is that I'm asking for all these changes to happen because I see, I say my kids, but all these young people failing and dropping out of school. Is that sometimes these changes go against like the teachers union, and there's a lot of obstacles. I think anytime you're trying to change certain structure, such as education.
I would just argue that, because you could get really in a quagmire when you're talking about in-classroom changes, which we know we need to do some things to change how we teach in the classroom. No question. I think, again, it's outside of the classroom. What is that infrastructure outside of the classroom for children and families? What are they doing after school? What are they doing in the summer? We know there's third grade reading loss. From kindergarten to third grade, there is research around this. There is huge, when kids aren't reading intensely in the summertime, K through third grade, that's a huge window of time when they're not. There's a huge loss of academic ability in the classroom when they come back. These are things we can do outside of the classroom so that when the kids come into the classroom, they're able to excel. And I think we have to make the investment in programs that are real. And it's going to cost some money. We got to realize that. I mean, this stuff isn't magic. I mean, this is where I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no. I think in one thing also to add to that, not just I think we pay a lot of attention to our local schools, K to 12, the graduation rate. One of the things that we don't talk about is how many of the students that are actually graduating are going on to college and finishing within 4 years. We look at our state schools and the cost of tuition has stayed the same, but the cost of fees has increased. Like my school, UMass Amherst, has pretty much doubled. And I think one of the reasons that this is going on is that these decisions are being made in closed rooms. Like, there's no one out there within, you know, the Board of Trustees that is really looking at, you know, why are these urban students graduating at the 5-6 year mark? Why are they dropping out in such large rates? And it's a discussion that's never had within the cities. And now that I have a mayor in front of me, you know, I think it's definitely something that should be in, you know, mayor's radar.
Thank you both for your illustrious dialogue. Due to time frames, we're no longer taking questions. However, to the panel, what is one last golden nugget you would like everybody in this room to walk away with?
I've talked about this.
Any last points you guys would like to make before we wrap?
I would encourage everyone on here to go into politics and run for public office.
Okay.
Well said.
I'd say the same thing, and I would say it's scary, do it anyways.
Okay.
I echo both of those comments.
I'm not gonna echo both of those, because I'm not in a political office, but,
She's running. We gotta work on her campaign.
I would say that, you know, take your legal education as far as you possibly can take it. And take advantage of all the opportunities that you are afforded throughout your legal career. It's just not a JD. It's a lot more than that. And there are people you are going to meet, there are programs, there are everything. Take advantage of every opportunity and seize the moment. Because you may not be a practicing attorney when you leave. You may go into politics and never represent anybody ever. But I would say take advantage of whatever opportunities. You have to pay for this once it's all over and done with. So take it seriously. You know, take your grades seriously, take the people that you meet seriously, work really, really hard. You know, and it's networking and it's your grades, because when you want to call someone and say, oh, I applied for this job, and they're like, send me your transcript, and they look at it, you're not giving them much to work with. So your grades are very much important, but so are the connections that you make, and so are the internships and the volunteer, and the hard work that you put in. And you should always be working 150%. Never ever 100. That is not enough.
I want to give out my email, just so I'm happy to talk to anyone here, follow up. I've got some initiatives that we're launching. I've got a major initiative with the Conference of Mayors at the national level launched on economic mobility. But I'd love to stay in touch and be helpful. My email is swarren@newtonma.gov, swarren@newtonma.gov. Happy to follow up with anyone here and continue the connectivity, the network. It's all part of the network.
Oh, no Twitter handle? Just playing with you. Thank you, thank you everybody so much for your participation and dropping some knowledge. I hope you guys were highly educated and are able to walk out this room and energized and engaged and ready to enter whatever field that suits you. And do not forget, Dress for Success is Tuesday at 6 p.m., first floor function room. There are prizes, raffles, fashion shows, stylists giving you points, tips, everything, and it's all totally free and open to you guys. Have a good day.